is Ralph, and I am one of the members of Group 4. In this video, we will explain and elaborate our one-week lesson plan together with its table of specification, or the TOS, and its grammatical assessment. Change direct to indirect speech and vice versa with the respected code EN9G-IVF-1 is the learning competency that we have chosen. This particular learning competency is for grade 9 students, meaning to say that our one-week lesson plan will be focused on the English 9 or the English for grade 9. By the end of the week, students must be able to describe direct and indirect speech, determine the general rules in changing direct to indirect speech and vice versa, convert direct to indirect speech and vice versa, participate in various activities related to direct and indirect speech, and lastly, use direct and indirect speech appropriately in meaningful contexts. The points that are flashed in your screens are the main topics that needs to be discussed during this presentation. Since I am now giving you the short introduction, Ms. Rinconada will explain about the connection between the learning objectives, the activities, and the daily assessments. Ms. Pawaon will show us the correlation between the table of specification, or the TOS, and the grammatical assessment. On the other hand, Ms. Delors Reyes will tell us about the connection between the general objectives and the grammatical assessment. And lastly, Ms. Plaza, together with Ms. Niones and Ms. Ampiano, will anatomize the grammatical assessment to give us further details. I'll see you later for the finalization and the review of this presentation.
Good day, I am Jovi Rinconada, and I will be discussing the alignment of the objectives, activities, and assessment in the lesson plan. Our lesson plan consists of specific lesson procedures to attain our learning competency for 5 days. Hence, we have specific objectives, activities, and assessment per day which are anchored on our learning competency. In day 1, we have 3 learning objectives: identify direct and reported speech, compare direct speech and reported speech, and construct own examples of direct and reported speech. The first objective relates with the assessment, where students need to identify whether the statement is a direct speech or reported speech. The second objective relates with the activity, where students will compare direct speech and reported speech from the sentences in the speech balloons. The third objective relates with the application, where students will write 2 examples of direct speech and reported speech, and they will share it by pair. In day 2, we have 3 learning objectives: determine the rules in changing direct speech into reported speech, change direct speech into reported speech, and construct a news report using reported speech. The first objective relates with the activity, where the students will be able to relay a direct speech within a group and tries to convert this into reported speech. Then, the students will now determine the rules in changing direct speech into reported speech. The second objective relates with the assessment, where the students will change the 10 direct speeches into reported speech using the general rules. The third objective relates with the application, where the students will be given a statement in a direct form of speech, and then the students will now construct a news report by changing the direct speech into reported speech. In day 3, we have 3 learning objectives: determine the rules in changing reported speech into direct speech, change reported speech into direct speech, and construct a dialogue using direct speech. The first objective relates with the activity, where the students on each group will be given a reported speech, and they will try to construct a dialogue from this. Then, they will determine the rules on how the reported speech change into direct speech. The second objective relates with the assessment, where the students will change the 10 reported speeches into direct speech. The third objective relates with the application, where the students will be given an image, and from this, they will construct a dialogue using direct speech. In day 4, we have 3 learning objectives. Recall about direct and reported speech, differentiate direct from reported speech and vice versa, and convert direct speech into reported speech and vice versa. The first objective relates with the abstraction, where the teacher and the students will have a review about direct and reported speech. The second objective relates with the application, where the students will have a role play implying the different use of direct and reported speech in different scenarios. The third objective relates with the activity, where the students will pick a paper strips which contains either direct or reported speech. If the students have a direct speech, then he will find its reported speech from the other students. In day 5, we have 3 learning objectives. Recall understanding on direct and reported speech, show readiness to answer the test about direct and reported speech, and answer the 50-item test honestly. The first objective relates with the procedure, where the teacher will conduct a short review regarding the topic. The second objective relates with the interview, where the students will be able to demonstrate readiness in answering the test. The third objective relates with the exam proper, where the students will answer a 50-item test without copying and cheating.
Hi everyone, my name is Nympha and I am a member of a group 4. Now in my part, I will be explaining our TOS or our table of specification that we need to use when we are developing our assessment instruction. So without further ado, let's go dive in how to construct our TOS or how to organize it. Now here is our table. So to be more precise, our assessment is grammatical test. Then our primary focus is in 3 domain, is more on cognitive. Okay, now as you can see in this table, we have level, objective, items, numbers, type of question, and percentage. Okay, now the first level is remembering, in which our objectives is the students must be able to describe the direct speech and the reported speech. So the number of items here is 1 to 5, and then the type of question is completion. So it is 10%. So where do we get this 10%, or how do we identify that it is 10%? So basically it is 5 divided by 50 times 100, and then the result will be 10. So this is the 10% here. And this part, since it is remembering, so our test question here is fill in the blanks. Okay, now and the second one is understanding, in which our objectives is the students must be able to determine whether the corresponding sentence uses direct or indirect speech. So it is under of understanding, and our type of question here is identification, and then it is 6 to 15 items. Okay, it is 20%. Okay, now and this third level is applying. So the objective here is the students must be able to use the rules of changing direct speech into reported speech and vice versa. It is 60 to 25 items, and then the type of question is supply, and it is 20%. The fourth level here is analyzing, and our objective here is the students must be able to analyze which among the given statement follows the rules of changing direct speech and into reported speech and vice versa. So same as the applying, they will be the one to identify if it is indirect speech to direct speech or vice versa. So the item here is 26 to 35, in which it is all multiple choice, and it is 20%. So this type of question is under analyzing because they will be able to analyze if which is the correct answer of the given question. Okay, now, and the fifth level here is evaluating. So in this part, our objective here must be able to evaluate whether the statement follow the correct rules of changing direct speech into reported speech and vice versa. So the items here is 36 to 40, and it is modified alternate response, and it is 10%. So in the last part is creating. So number 6 is creating. So our main objective here is the students must be able to construct a news article using appropriate, direct, and reported speech. So it is 41 to 50 items, and then it is construct response. It is 20%, okay? It is 41 to 50. So example, they will interview the President of the Philippines about the next election, and then they will implement direct and reported speech on the news article. Our type of question are more focused on cognitive since it is grammatical. So I think that is all for our TOS versus assessment, and this is Nemfa. Thank you so much.
I am Princess Jean Giles Reyes, and I will be discussing the consistency between the general learning objectives and the summative assessment of our lesson plan. The 5 general learning objectives of our lesson plan cover the 3 domains of learning, which are cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. Specifically, Objective A, describe direct and reported speech. Objective B, determine the general rules for changing direct speech into reported speech and vice versa. Objective C, convert direct speech into reported speech and vice versa, belong to the cognitive domain of learning. On the other hand, Objective D, participate in various activities related to direct and reported speech, belongs to the affective domain of learning. While Objective E, use direct and reported speech in meaningful context, belongs to the psychomotor domain of learning. Now, our summative assessment is a grammatical test comprised of 6 forms of tests. Now, I will discuss how the summative assessment is related to the general learning objectives. First, Objective A is consistent to the remembering and understanding level of the summative assessment, wherein for remembering, students need to describe direct and reported speech through a completion test indicated in items 1 to 5. For understanding, students need to determine whether the statement is a direct speech or reported speech through an identification test indicated in items 6 to 15. Second, Objective B is consistent to the analyzing and evaluating level of the summative assessment, wherein for analyzing, students need to analyze which among the following statements follow the rules of changing direct speech into reported speech and vice versa through a multiple choice test indicated in items 26 to 35. For evaluating, students need to evaluate whether the statement follows the correct rules for changing direct speech into reported speech and vice versa through a modified alternate response test indicated in items 36 to 40. Third, Objective C is consistent to the applying level of the summative assessment, wherein students need to use the general rules for changing direct speech into reported speech through a supply test indicated in items 16 to 25. Fourth, Objective D, which is under the affective domain of learning, is not included in the summative assessment since the summative assessment is a grammatical test. However, this objective is consistent to the daily group activities within the 1-week lesson plan. Lastly, Objective E is consistent to the creating level of the summative assessment, wherein students need to construct a news report using direct and reported speech through a constructed response test indicated in items 41 to 50. To sum up, items 1 to 15 are anchored to Objective A. Items 26 to 40 are anchored to Objective B. Items 16 to 25 are anchored to Objective C, and items 41 to 50 are anchored to Objective E.
Hi, I am Melanie Plaza, and I will be discussing tests 1 and 2 of our grammatical assessment. The test 1 is a completion test, and test 2 is an identification test. Now that we are down to grammatical test, let me first define what is grammatical test. Grammatical test means the ability of a learner to use the language, to express meaning, to produce correct grammar and usage. In our grammatical assessment, we have 6 types of tests. These are completion test, identification test, supply test, multiple choice test, modified alternate response test, and constructive response test. Test 1 is a 5-item completion test and labeled as remembering. With an objective, the students must be able to describe the direct speech and responded speech. Completion test with a level of remembering helps the students to recall and identify their knowledge about direct speech and indirect speech. It's simply recognizing what the learners learn throughout the discussion. Test 2 is a 10-item identification test. Level of understanding is this type of test. With an objective, the students must be able to determine whether the corresponding sentences use direct speech or indirect speech. An identification test with a level of understanding helps the learners to articulate or classify between 2 speeches. This type of test requires the students to see the difference between the 2 and conclude.
Hi, I'm Dame Marie Amñanas, and today I will be the one to explain the test 5 and 6 of the grammatical test. To discuss the relevance of the test to the learning objectives and in what domain and level does the test belong. So the first one is the test 5, which is the moderate alternate response test that covers 36 to 40 items. This test is under the level of evaluating that anchored to the cognitive domain of our learning objectives. It requires the students to evaluate if the statement is correctly converted from direct speech to reported speech, vice versa. They will put check if the statement is correct. They will put X if the statement is incorrect and underline the word error. So the objectives of evaluating level in the table of specification is that the student must be able to determine whether the statement follow the correct rules of changing the direct speeches into reported speeches, vice versa. So it matches the objectives of the test 5, which is the moderate alternate response test. So we have here the last one, which is the constructive response test that covers 40 to 50 items. This test is under the creating level that meets the psychomotor domains of our language objectives. For it requires the students to write a news article about an interview implementing the direct and reported speeches. And the students must highlight at least 3 reported speeches and direct speeches, provided with a rubric so students will be guided in writing their news article. The objective of the creating level in the table of specification is that the student must construct a news article using the appropriate direct and reported speeches, which is matched to the objective of test 6, and that is the construct responsive test.
Hi, I am Mylene Jean Sampiano, and I will be discussing tests 3 and 4 of our grammatical assessment test. First, the test 3 is a supply type of test, and the item numbers are 16 to 25. In this test, students need to convert the given direct speech into reported speech and vice versa. In the table of specifications, or TOS, this type of test is under the applying level of cognitive domain. The objective of applying is the student must be able to use the rules for changing direct speech into reported speech and vice versa, which is matched to the Test 3 supply test direction. Test 3 and TOS applying level are required students to change direct speech into reported speech and vice versa. Now, let's move on to Test 4. Test 4 is a multiple choice type of test. Item numbers are 26 to 35. This test is a form of assessment in which students are required to select the correct or the best answer out of the choices from the list. In the table of specifications or TOS, this type of test is under the analyzing level of the cognitive domain. The objective of analyzing is students must be able to analyze which among the given statements follow the rules of changing direct speech into reported speech and vice versa. Test 4 and analyzing level of TOS requires students to select from the given options that will make the stem complete or correct. Applying and analyzing level in our TOS is our guide on how we made our questions in Test 3 and Test 4. That is all. Thank you.
My group mates have elaborated the main topics of this lesson plan together with its grammatical assessment and table of specification. Now let us review their points and ideas of each topic. Firstly, Ms. Rinconada discussed about the relationship of the learning objectives, the activities, and the assessment of each day. She elaborated the connection of such factors from the lecture days, which is day 1 to 3, the performance day, which is day 4, and lastly, the assessment day, which is day 5. Secondly, Ms. Pawaon explained the connection of the table of specification, or the TOS, to the grammatical assessment. She explained the details of the table of specification that are necessary and essential in order to understand how the levels of the taxonomy are distributed throughout the grammatical assessment. Ms. De Los Reyes, on the other hand, clarified the correlation between the major objectives and the grammatical assessment. She elaborated that the goals or the major objectives were to be assessed by the end of the lesson plan or by the end of the week through the use of the grammatical assessment. Lastly, Ms. Plaza together with Ms. Neones and Ms. Sampiano anatomized the grammatical assessment. They explained each type of question and type of test to show the significance of these questions and tests on achieving our learning objectives. They also explained the connection of these questions to the table of specification in order to provide a more detailed explanation about such topic. Furthermore, this lesson plan revolves around the domains of learning. It also highlights the uses of both traditional assessment and performance-based assessment in order to maximize the learning process. The main objectives of this lesson plan are developed day by day and eventually measured by the end of the week through the use of the grammatical assessment. This has been Ralph, a member of Group 4.